Guys, my name is Mark Shelton. I thank you for the opportunity for speaking today. This is the first clinic I've ever been a part of, so if I'm a little nervous, I apologize, but I'll try to make the best of it. The topic I'm going to be talking about today is training athletes how to be leaders. Today, I feel like, coaches do a good job about training athletes how to be leaders on the field, but sometimes I feel like we're falling just a little bit short of being leaders outside of the football field, whether it's in the classroom or in everyday life. So as we get more, I'm going to kind of isolate and talk about some things that I feel need to be addressed and kind of make a plan so you guys can kind of help you develop your own plan to help you with your athletes. So a little about me. My name is Mark Shelton. I'm currently the running back coach at Dodge City Community College here in Kansas. I recently started, with all the downtime we've had, the football coaches forum. Before I took the job at Dodge, I was offensive coordinator at Buckland High School, which is an 8-man football program. Previous to that, I was the running back linebacker coach at Haven High. And then right out of college, I was given the opportunity to be the running back coach at McPherson College. If anytime you guys want to contact me, my information is right here in the contact information. Feel free to reach out. It may take me an hour or two, but I will respond. So the first thing I want to address is the importance of leadership. Why do we develop leaders, and why is it important to teach these skills? The main thing, why is it important? Because these kids are what makes the program successful, what makes the school successful. The better these kids are going to develop as leaders, it's going to help situations in and out of the classrooms where tensions may arise, and your players are going to step up and help alleviate the tension. Not to mention, it's going to change the entire culture of the school. Why is it important to teach these skills? I feel it's important because you are helping teach a skill that these kids are going to be able to use in their lives, whether it's their next chapter they're going to play college football, whether it's them in the business world. It's just help them not be afraid to take that leadership role. I'm a big fan of Mike Krzyzewski and Duke basketball, and one of the things that I want to bring out is a common mistake among those who work in the sport is spending a amount of time on X and O's as compared to spending time on learning about people. One thing coming from my background being a special ed teacher, there's different ways of learning. Sometimes it takes teaching kids a different way for them to remember plays, things like that. The big thing, a coach is a leader. For me, the big thing is what coach did I take after? For me, it was Coach Brock, who was my high school football coach, kind of helped me get out of the path going down the wrong hill, and kind of just was there to step up and kind of was like a father figure that I never had. With that being said, you want to ask what leadership qualities did they show? For him, it was his compassion, always willing to go the extra mile for his players. And, I remember the big thing for me was him ripping my ass for skipping a class to go eat at McDonald's. I mean, I've never been more scared of a coach in my entire life, especially when I ran all 8,263 stadium seats in my high school stadium. What have you learned from that model? And what do you plan on teaching your athletes about leadership? In my experience, leadership can be learned in many ways. The big thing is athletes learn from by having opportunities to lead. I mean, yeah, we're human, so we're going to make mistakes from time to time. Even coaches make mistakes. We may call the wrong play or, maybe teach something the wrong way. Another misconception is coaches and teachers are not doing much to teach about leadership. They're telling what leaders do, but they're not showing them how to do it. So the objectives today, I kind of want to define leadership in high school athletics or college athletics. Discuss how to teach leadership, and kind of just go over a quick brief of how to come up with a plan. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is defining leadership for players. So the three questions you got to ask yourself, or you want to talk about, is what is leadership to you? Define it for yourself. What does a good leader do? Kind of just another thing when I do it, when I talk with my players about leadership, is you talk about a leadership profile where you have your players fill it out, but the first thing you do, you have your coaches fill it out. And the profile basically just goes where I'm at as a leader, where I want to be, and how I'm going to get there. And you'll be amazed of how when you write this stuff down and you actually read back to you, how interesting your results are. Like for me, when I did it, where I thought I was at was nowhere near where I was actually at. And then my goals, and then I can go back and look at that document and kind of just shape how I want to do things. So the first thing, what is leadership? The textbook says is a behavioral process in which an individual influences another individual or group to accomplish a set of shared goals. So as a coach, your leadership is to provide, you want to win a state championship, you want to win a district championship, things like that. And the big person, the coach is, the father figure of the team. The coach sets the goals of the program. Here's a model, just the model of sports leadership. You have your situational characteristics, your leader, your member characteristics, required behavior, actual behavior, and preferred behavior, which all ties into the performance and satisfaction. So if we are teaching these athletes on each step what to do in certain situations, how to develop as a leader, what are the characteristics they need to learn to be successful, then this model would be perfect. Because it all turns into, we can preach anything to a player, but if they don't buy in, the actual behavior could be different from what we want. When you come in and you think about what you want to do, you got to ask yourself five tough questions. The first one is when to set firm boundaries and when to be flexible. What do I want? What goals and rules do I want to be concrete, and what can I have a little leeway? The next question is when to support an athlete's goal and when to challenge them. The best way that I always do this with number 2 is, before every season, I have my running backs write down their goals, and then I share with my goals and then we go back and see how can we change their goals to make it more challenging. Number 3 is big. How to grant athletes choice and autonomy without putting them at risk or disadvantage. So basically, how do we want to give them the opportunity to lead or the choice to lead without putting risk or disadvantage for the team? The big one for me, because I do have a problem listening, when to listen, when to be empathetic, and when to give one point of view. So, you just want to understand when you need to listen to a player and hear his point of view, because you don't know what's going on with that kid. Something could be affecting him at home, that maybe he has some emotional triggers that, when you yell at a child, they just immediately shut down. So now you got to figure out how to reach that kid. The last tough question for me, especially being a father, is when to let athletes or children learn from their mistakes. When is it right to just let a kid intentionally do something so he can learn? The big thing for me, example, is teaching my kid how to ride a bike. I know eventually I'm going to have to let go, and I know that she could get hurt, but she's going to learn through that process how to ride a bike. So at this step, what you want to do to help build your leaders is you need to define what leadership is for you. Because as a coach, leadership starts with you. So how you define the leadership perspective for you shapes how you teach your athletes. Then you want to, how are you going to model that leadership or your vision of leadership? Sometimes people just lead by example. How are you going to show athletes and students to lead by example is a thing that you have to start thinking about. A big thing is how you can identify your leaders and captains. This one is pretty, sometimes you pick your leaders by what they do in the off season. Sometimes you pick your leaders by, vote from a team. It's how you define how you want to pick those leaders. The next one would be, how do you give them responsibilities that's meaningful? As a leader of the team, do I just sit there and it's just, just an honor? I really don't have anything. For me, when we pick the leader of the team, you are part of the council. So any disciplinary action or anything that has to go as for a team-wise, you are part of the process because you are the team leader. You are taking that responsibility as a captain that you are taking part in the decision-making process. Next one was, how are you going to communicate with them? Are you going to have weekly meetings? Or are you just going to send out a text? The big thing is when you communicate with your leaders, you want to make sure that you provide clear instructions or clear expectations. So there's no leeway for them to make decisions. Go back to this one, talk about team issues. You want to ask questions to your leaders, have them ask questions. Always want to make sure that you listen and you discuss their plans for leading and give feedback. One thing with that one, even me myself as a coach, I always want feedback. So when my head coach comes to me and tells me that I may have handled a situation in an incorrect way, I want to know that so I don't make that mistake again. And it's the same thing with, you're molding these leaders. Sometimes you have to be honest with them and tell them that maybe how they're leading is ineffective. So when we go on this, what is your definition of leadership? What is your definition of leadership? This goes back to that first phase of what's your definition of leadership? Is it just, hey, I lead by example? Do I lead by, giving clear expectations? Do I lead by just telling my players what I want? And just those, you have to determine for yourself what is a leader. To model leadership, the couple things you want to understand. What are the difficulties with modeling leadership? How can I model what I want my athletes to become leaders? And what areas could I improve on modeling my leadership techniques? Do I need more emotional control? Can I talk to my players in a rational manner? Am I always going to be in control? We've all had tough losses, and the big thing is composure. How am I going to talk to my leaders, or how am I going to address my team after a tough loss? Because, losing sucks. And sometimes players make mistakes, and sometimes as a coach, you want to call players out when they're in the wrong. Now, me personally, I don't like doing that in front of everybody because now you're going to have potential where that kid's going to shut down. Kind of just talk to them. How you handle those is up to you. Always big listening, communicating, giving kids hope and optimism, having them focus, practice intensity and enthusiasm, be happy, be excited for when they do something right, things like that. To model leadership, you must develop trust with your leaders. One big way of doing that, especially in college, we take seniors on senior trips, or leaders on leader trips, and just have some team bonding or leaders bonding experience. The big thing about modeling leadership, if you don't have open communication, it fails. Because if leaders aren't afraid to talk to you about certain issues, those issues aren't aren't going to get fixed, and that could destroy team morale. One of many ways you develop trust is being a consistent model or appropriate leader behavior. So always, my high school head coach was a great example of this. He was firm, fair, and consistent. We trusted him because we knew no matter what, he was going to be fair, he was going to be firm, and he was going to be consistent. There was no ever leeway on any handling anything. His son got in trouble at school, and we all thought that coach's son, he's going to be above anything. He's going to be playing on Friday night. We were wrong. Coach suspended him for the rest of the year because he was not doing what he was supposed to do in the classroom. So that's one thing, always want to develop your trust with your players. How else can you exhibit trust in your team leaders? So how else can you show your leaders that you trust them? Whether it's just giving them simple tasks, simple procedures, that's something that, those small little things add up. The big thing for me, especially, is how do we select the right leaders? The big thing, you clearly want to define what you're looking for a captain. You want to make sure you select the right people to be captains, not just for the best players, because sometimes the best players aren't the best captains or the best leaders. Sometimes not the most popular, and sometimes it's not your favorites, although sometimes it is. Me personally, I put this next one in here. You always want to do your homework and take your time to identify leaders. For example, you might ask opinions of your coaching staff. And for me, I even ask some of the players because coach has been around the game long enough, can tell when kids are putting on an act and they're not really identifying or not really showing that they're good leaders outside of meetings with the coach. I put this chart together just, this is how I select captains, or how I help my coach select captains. These are the three things that I've been a part of in my coaching experience. The first one is coach appointment. This is the one that we do here where I work at Dodge City Community College. It's coach appointment. We do extensive research to determine who's going to be the leader. We actually have the kids apply to be leaders, and then we kind of have job interviews where we ask a series of tough questions, and the ones that go through the process are selected. I mean, this past year we had 85 kids on the team, and we had about 33 kids that applied to be leaders, and we only selected 3. So, I mean, it was a lot more work for us, but leadership-wise, we thought that we did the right thing because those kids were strong leaders. I mean, when they talk, kids just shut up and listened. The next one is the coach team selection process. So the vote and rationale, coach maintains veto power. So basically this one, they would vote, coach didn't agree with it, he could veto it, pick the one he wants. You would have to create exclusive leadership, elevate leadership from each player. You create a balance of the players that you want, and the team votes. Usually did this. The thing I didn't like about this one, usually do this one at the end of the football season and start of your off season for that year, and then you would reevaluate before the season to see if those kids were the right ones you want for the season. And the last one would be a coach-athlete vote. The coaches pick captains, athletes pick assistants. So basically, you pick how it would work. You pick 3 main captains, and then you would pick another 3 assistant captains. The main captain would be picked by the coaches, and the assistant would be picked by the students. Sometimes in states you can pick 2 coaches and insert a rotating third captain. So in that situation, you would just pick 2 main captains, and you just pick a player every week to be a rotating captain, which I was a part of that one in high school and when I played college football. we always had the rotating captain because we would have the 2 leaders, and then we would always have that one rotating captain to be a senior, so we could make sure that every chance we got, we had a senior on the leadership council. The thing I tell my coaches and captain selection is to make sure that you're choosing someone that everyone in the program from kindergarten on up can look up to, the role model. So if they're making poor choices, they shouldn't be a captain. So, I mean, for me, briefly, I go back and I look through, especially when I did this, when I was offensive coordinator, I was in charge of this process at high school. I'd go back and I would ask teachers how they are in the classroom. Are they getting their stuff done? Are they making the smart decisions outside the classroom? And, you know, we had the best athlete on the team, probably the most popular kid on the school. He wasn't a good captain. He badmouthed everybody. He would not do the stuff outside the classroom. And, you know, sometimes in high school sports, being a captain's huge. So I informed him that he wasn't going to be a captain because of his actions. He was not very happy. And then the following year, you know, his complete mindset was totally different. So sometimes when you go back and you look at your captain, sometimes it can have a pivotal step or increase in how athletes view and change their behavior because they want to be a leader of the team. When you do pick a leader, you want to make sure you give them responsibilities. How do you give up some of the control, but not too much? What leaders should be responsible for? If trained well, can a good leader, what could they do? So with these, the big thing for how I teach it is when you give up control, especially if you're a head coach, if you give up control, sometimes you feel like you're not in control of things. So the big thing for that is how do you determine what things you can give up? So what I've always been taught is you're not giving up anything. It's kind of like you're micromanaging. You're telling these leaders how to handle certain things, but you still have ultimate control. One of the main things we did with our leaders, they're responsible for making sure that everybody picks up and tidies the locker room and the weight room. The big term that we like to use, you don't shit where you eat. So that's one thing the captains are responsible for. Our captains do a good job of doing rotating shifts with a couple of players. We do, and every day, different players and a captain are in there picking up trash and cleaning up, wiping down machines in the weight room. This question, the next one is, if trained well and a good leader, what can they do? I mean, honestly, I've been a part of a team that had some really good leaders, but the talent wasn't there, and we ended up making to the third round of the playoffs because those kids pushed and made everybody else believe in the team and what the mission was. So if a good leader, they can carry the team to beyond your expectations. So there's no telling what a good leader could do for your program, and not to mention we don't know what they're going to be able to accomplish outside of high school. So with overall all that stuff, I mean, the big thing to create is kind of want to create a plan. So the plan basically would take how you're going to define a leadership plan. So your plan could start with just basically going over through those steps that we talked about. And then kind of once you identify what your goal is for leaders, and you determine what's your vision of a leader. Is your vision going to be for just in the classroom or for both or outside the classroom? Then you can start making a plan. So the plan will go to, how the next step would be the plan is you want to determine how often you're going to meet with your leaders. What are their roles going to be? How do you determine how your captains are going to be chosen? And when those captains are chosen, is there a process to reevaluate them every now and then to make sure you still have the right captain that you thought. If a captain's not working and leadership's not doing what he's supposed to do, how do you address that? Those are the questions you got to ask. And for me, when that comes up, I have a meeting with all the leaders, and we talk about, Johnny's not doing what he's supposed to. What are you guys seeing? And then ultimately, I let the leadership council decide if he should be removed, because it's going to be more effective if coming from the athletes group than just the coach, because those are his peers. And then back to the question about the plan. So once you get that leadership council or the leaders of your team developed, then you want to start meeting and talk about what are your goals as a group, what are your thoughts and process. One of the big things for us is we allow the players to, when we meet, to talk about what do we want to do for community outreach program. And this past year, one of the big things for our team was the kids wanted to go read to the grade school kids because they show up to our games. They want to be positive role models for the youth, because some of the kids, especially in junior college level, they didn't have that great figure to look up to when they were going to school, and they want to just change. So that was one of the big pushes for when we did our leadership council, that those players developed what they wanted to do for the community outreach. And then after that, the sky's the limit. I hope you guys, if you guys need any questions or have any questions for me, feel free to use my contact information. I'll answer it. I'm going to try to get back on here at a later date today and go in more detail about how to develop a plan. I just want to thank these guys for allowing me to be a part of this, my first clinic. I know I was a little nervous, and I thank you guys for taking the time to allow me to do this. And I wish you the best of luck on your season, and hope you guys get the outcome that you guys all want. So have a good day.